Your Emojo Caddy assembly instructions. First, inspect all your boxes and make sure there's no freight damage. Once inspected, if everything's good, open the things up. In a clean workspace, break out all your pieces. Box 1, you're going to have your front frame assembly. This will have your handlebars, with your brakes, your display, your throttle, your shifter. All this will be attached to the front. In box 2, this is your rear assembly. This will have your accessory box with your charger, your 2 rear wheels attached to the rear frame. Pull this out. And then in box 3, this is simply just your front tire with your motor, attaching the handlebars. Using your 5mm Allen wrench, remove the protective plastic sleeve and retaining cap from the bike. These are only here for shipping and to keep the forks from dropping out. These both can be discarded after removal. Keeping cables and wires forward, the brake handles forward, slide the neck down over the top of the forks where the plastic sleeve was just removed. Tilt the neck and handlebar assembly down and forward by sliding the lock tab, then lifting up the tension lever. Using your 5mm Allen wrench, attach the neck to the forks by tightening the bolt inside the neck. Tighten very firm, but don't over torque the bolt. Bring the handlebars up and back into your desired position. Use the tension bolt to firm up the locking lever, and bring down the locking lever to hold the handlebars in place. Tighten the 2 screws on each side of the neck using a 4mm Allen wrench, and this will hold your handlebars to the front forks. Attaching the front wheel. Remove the support bar from the front forks. This could be discarded and thrown away. Remove the plastic retaining clip from the brake calipers. Before placing the front wheel on the forks, orient the wheel so the tire for the motor is aimed up. You want the wire facing up towards the handlebars. Put a retaining washer on each side of the wheel's axle with the metal tabs facing out. Both washers should be oriented the same way with the tabs towards the bottom of the fork dropout. Slide the brake disc between the brake pads and the brake caliper as you place the wheel into the fork, keeping the washer tabs at the bottom of the fork's dropout. Next, slide on the 2 black tear-shaped spacers, which you'll find in your hardware pack, then a normal washer, and then the bolt. Tighten with a 19mm wrench. Next, you need to tighten and balance your front brake. Using a 5mm Allen wrench, secure the brake caliper with the 2 Allen screws facing towards the back of the bike. These screws allow you to adjust the balance of the brakes around the brake disc. Take note, before completely tightening the screws, balance the brake disc attached to the wheel between the 2 brake pads and the caliper. This will prevent the disc from rubbing, allowing for a smoother, quieter ride. Next step, attach the front frame to the rear frame. Using the 6 M10 socket head bolts, attach the front and rear assembly of the bike together. Place 1 standard washer onto each bolt before running the bolts through the holes. After the bolt is through the hole, on both the front and rear frame assembly, slide 1 flat washer and 1 nut onto each bolt. Get all 6 bolts into position with their washers and lock nuts started before tightening them all down. Attach and balance the rear brakes. Start with removing the red plastic tabs from both brake calipers. These are only here for shipping. The brakes are specific for each side of the bike. There's a left brake and a right brake. They cannot be attached backwards. Take the left brake caliper and pull it through the bottom of the bike, then through the side of the frame. Place the caliper over the brake disc with the brakes mounting bracket between the brake disc and the frame. line up the holes. Take 2 of the black M6 1.0 Allen head screws, slide through the holes on the frame, and then thread them into the mounting bracket attached to the brake caliper. Note: do not worry about tightening the 2 screws on the tops of the brakes. It's okay if the brake caliper is wobbling on the bracket. We will be tightening this in the next step. Looking down on the top of the brake assembly, you will find 2 black M6 1.0 Allen head screws. These screws attach the brake caliper to the mounting bracket as well as allow you to balance the brakes. Before completely tightening these 2 screws on each brake, you need to align the brake pads. This also will make the bike run much smoother and quieter. A good trick to help you accomplish this is to raise up the rear end of the bike, allowing the wheels to spin freely. Placing a sheet of white paper or a light behind will also help you see the disc between the brake pads. Attaching the chain. Stretch the chain out next to the right side of the bike. Place the end with the pin towards the front of the bike. Pick up the end of the chain closest to the back of the bike without the pin. Run the chain through the frame of the bike and drape the chain over the smallest gear of the cassette on the rear axle. Stretch out the derailleur by pulling it down towards the floor. Note: the derailleur will not stay down on its own. It will spring back up into its resting position if let go. With the derailleur pulled down, run the end of the chain down the front of the top pulley on the derailleur. Next, pull the chain through the middle of the derailleur. Feed the end of the chain over the top of the bottom pulley and down around the back of the pulley, continuing to hold the derailleur down. Attach both ends of the chain together by pressing the chain pin through the link. Note: it is not necessary to have the chain wrapped around the pedal sprocket when attaching the 2 ends together. The chain can be pulled over the sprocket after join. Next step: attaching the shifter cable. Use the gear shifter on the handlebars and set it to 7. Position the end of the shifter cable and housing over the rear axle for insertion into the derailleur. The steel cable may be backed out of the sleeve. If this is the case, simply feed the cable from the handlebars down into the sleeve until the cable pops out. Next, go to the rear axle and gear cassette. Set or make sure the chain is still on the smallest sprocket. Pass the cable under the tab of the cable anchor bolt and tighten the nut to hold the cable in place. Set the cable adjustment barrel to its 0 position by turning it clockwise until it can't turn anymore. Run the steel cable through the barrel. Once the cable is ran through, seat the end of the housing into the barrel. Check the gear cassette's position on the rear axle. It should be 1/8 to 1/4 inch away from the frame. Make sure the set screw and the nut are tight. Next step: attaching the rear basket and fenders. Grab one of the 2 longer fenders and 4 of the M6 5/8 bolts with washers. Drop the bolts with washers down through the holes of the fenders and mounting brackets. Using another washer and an M6 lock nut, tighten down the bolts attaching the fender to the brackets. Attach the shorter end of the basket, keeping the longer side of the bracket sticking out. Just get these bolts started enough to hold the brackets on. Do not tighten down all the way. Using 8 of the M5 3/8 bolts with a standard and lock washer, attach the fender brackets to the rear basket After these are tight, go ahead and finish tightening the M5 3/8 bolts holding the fender brackets to the rear basket. Place the rear basket on the back, keeping the 55-pound max load label at the rear of the bike. Attach the basket to the bike using the 4 M6 2 and 3/8 inch bolts, washers, and lock nuts. Note, do not tighten these bolts too fast, either by hand or with a power tool. The bolt could overheat and become stripped. Attaching the front fender and headlight. Take the remaining small fender mounting bracket and place it over the fender with the shortest end pointing up and facing towards the front of the fender. Now that the bracket is attached to the fender, take your headlight and one of the M6 1 1/4 inch bolts, run it through both mounting brackets and the light and the fender. Attach the forks using the center hole right above the front wheel. Connecting the headlight. Identify the positive wire marked with the text on the outer insulation. Connect the wire to the headlamp. The positive wire connects to the positive on the light. The remaining connector attaches to the negative. Attaching the front basket. Before attaching the front basket, find the channel notched into the top and bottom of the mounting bracket at the front of the bike. These notches are there for recessing the brake lines, shifter cable, and wire harness. Attach the front basket using the 4 M5 7/16 bolts with lock washers. With the front basket attached, you can now release whatever method you used to hold the cables in place. Next step, attaching the pedals. Attach the left pedal to the left crank arm by turning counterclockwise. Attach the right pedal to the right crank arm by turning clockwise. Inserting the battery. Make sure the front pole clamp is turned forward with the locking tab facing the front of the bike. Insert the battery by sliding it down onto the rail behind the seat. Hold the battery as you slide it down. Do not drop the battery. The battery will lock into place by turning the key. Attaching the seat. Attach the seat to the post by lining up the channels on the clamp with the rails underneath the seat. Keep the top of the lettering on the seat post at the front side of the bike. Adjust the seat to your desired position and tighten in place. Insert the seat post into the bike frame. Find the seat height you desire and tighten. Check your tire pressure. Front tire should be 35 PSI, rear tires 20 PSI. Powering on the bike. Turn the key to the on position on the battery. 2 clicks to the right and make sure the rear pin on the battery clears the rail. Press and hold the M button on the keypad for 3 seconds until it turns on. Hold for 3 seconds to turn the bike off.